citizens of Ukraine. This is a plenary week at the parliament, and one of the laws that was adopted in the second reading is the law which aims at providing access to all possible registers as a tool to fight corruption. This is just one of the elements of broad anti-corruption policy in Ukraine. It was initiated by a number of MPs, and I'm very glad that we have Leonid Kozachenko today with us, who's one of the main ideologists of this draft law and one of co-authors. So I invite him here to tell us about the gist and the mechanism of this law. And he'll tell us how this law should work in order to overcome corruption phenomena in Ukraine. This is a rather interesting instrument which is not linked to any criminal procedures. This is just an element of transparency in the society. And also we have here Dennis Bigus, who has started the very interesting initiative. He actually does implement the law to some extent in practice, and then we'll see how the mechanism should work. The floor is yours, Leonid. Good afternoon, everybody. Taras has told us a bit about what is really important, but I think I can add something useful. And such laws are there in 7 countries of the European Union, and they make public part of personal data of those who live on the territory of those countries. I have pledged to the business environment, society, and to the public to do something in this case, because many people said that personal data about many people who are related or linked to some extent to high officials is closed, especially when we think of people who work in law enforcing bodies, and especially those who are owners of a number of different assets that are incompatible with the income that they get. And of course, the law that I tabled is linked directly to the fight in corruption, and the American Chamber of Commerce, the Association of Employers, European Business Association, and the other organizations have insisted that Ukraine does adopt this law. Not only people from the business milieu. What does this law give to everyone? It gives us an opportunity to search by name and surname to see what a person owns, and you can get to know what kind of property or other assets this person have. And when cars are concerned, it tells us, for instance, about the make of the car, the year it was registered. Also, it tells us about the dwellings that this person owns, about the how big this dwelling is, and you get the information about the size of the property, but it doesn't tell you the exact door number. Another object that can be identified is the rights to the land. You can get an exhaustive information when you Google the name and surname, and you can see how much this person has as far as land is concerned. But of course you have to identify yourself to get this information, and the law provides you a very clear-cut procedure so that the one about whom you get the information also can get to know who got the information about them. And then, of course, there's a way to get the information officially. If you have to get a written document from the state agency, then you have to get it stamped, and it tells you how you get it, stamped and on paper. All these procedures are clearly designated in the draft law, and the main thing is that we do have an opportunity to radically influence the situation. In one of the post-Soviet countries, when such a law was enacted, 1,500 officials left the country within a month and a half because journalists started to publish the information about what they own and how they live and what about their relatives, because there were, for instance, cases when top officials had cars registered in the name of their drivers, for instance, but this law did influence the situation and made it more transparent. If this law is signed by the chairman of the parliament and the president, and it becomes active within a month and a half, and then the cabinet of ministers has the right to regulate all technical problems before the law becomes active. And of course the access from the access was not to information was not previously provided for. We think that the information should be accessible to everyone who lives in our country and can identify themselves, will be available from the 1st of December at latest. Yesterday I was glad that this happened, which is a rare case while I am working in the Verkhovna Rada. Also, I thank 9 of my colleagues who signed this draft law as co-authors. I think that we will put every effort to solve the issues of fighting corruption in our society and our state. Well, first of all, thank you very much, because this is a very good initiative, but my question is, what about the who are affected by this law? And you said the persons linked to them. Well, for instance, judges' wives and moms, everyone who has a passport of the citizen of Ukraine is subject to this law, irrespectively of what they do. Everyone who is registered on the territory of Ukraine and has a passport of a Ukrainian citizen, you can check on any person who lives in Ukraine now. And not only a person, but also legal entities, if this property or rights are registered in the name of this person or legal entity, they are subject to this law. This is the full revelation of information. You can check your neighbors, your friends, anyone that you want to check. I remember this was done in Romania some 7 years ago, and I was there at one university, and the students joked that the girls said that this is very good for us, because some guys were saying that, for instance, they were renting a Mercedes, and they were sort of trying to deceive girls, saying that they have more than one car of this make, but the girls checked them and saw that they only own a bicycle. And I do think that the president won't veto this law and will sign it as soon as possible. Apart from Romania, I know that there's a similar law in Sweden and practically Northern Europe, Poland and Georgia, and by the way, there's such a law in Belarus, where they actually went even further, because they opened their telephone numbers and door numbers. And in Sweden you can see how much tax a person is paying. Yes, that's right. What is the salary? What is the tax situation? I think that this is not as important for us now. We are working on other projects now, which will also reveal information about court decisions, which is closed now. We want to have more information about what's happening at our customs service and what concerns fiscal service, and the issue of VAT rebate. We prepare changes and amendments there, rather different, but it does influence the issues of fighting corruption. And now Denis will tell us about whether there's a demand for this information, how they try to counteract it, and how transparency can be a tool to fight corruption. Well, transparency is actually a good tool to fight corruption. I want to thank MPs. This is a reason to dance Kachucha, and I do hope that it will be signed, because if this doesn't happen, then this is not just treachery, this is shame. I personally see the efficiency of this law in the opportunity to automatically compare we have a good initiative on declarations, and I do hope that this law is well realized, implemented. The chief advantage is that now we can compare what the person has with what they declared. And because the declarations are already there, then I say that they can be easily checked. And as soon we will have responsibility for wrongly and incorrectly filled information, declarations, we can see this. And probably by the end of the year, we'll see the festival of dismissals and revelations. So glory, glory, hallelujah, I don't want to say otherwise. Thank you very much for the support to the document. We see how important it is for the society.
My question is to Mr. Kozachenko and to you, Denis. There are good norms, but if there's no funding, they do not work. So, what are the mechanisms? There's a certain time frame when certain things are to be done, but will there be any amendments made to the budget? Doesn't it require funding? What's the responsibility if these norms do not start operating, working in the norms that Mr. Kozachenko mentioned? All the official part of the question is to Mr. Kozachenko. But I will tell you that starting from opening registers, we're saying that we need to develop some new software. But today, we all were using the resources that are available. All the bases are being formed. They are there. Very often this is some inadequate format, like it was with the database of tenders, but within a month, they managed to reformat it into something decent. If you have data, then to develop some portal or sub-program, it's not that difficult. So there are no major problems. I don't see them, though I'm not a developer. But as to responsibility and other things, that is to Mr. Kozachenko. I will tell you that there is certain resistance. People are saying that we're not ready to that, we need some money from the budget. It was there in the beginning, but then when they requested to give a specific answer, how much money you need and what's the problem, then we have 3 associations which represent IT community, and they said we are ready to help the government free of charge to correct the soft which they're using. If someone says millions hryvnias, will do it all free of charge. Then the answer was, even if it is free of charge, then the journalist identifies himself, gets information, then gives it to a neighbor, to someone he knows, and they start running all over the world, and they're not responsible for that, because that's not the journalist who identified himself. The answer was, once it provided by the law, if the journalist publishes it in the newspaper, adds an exact address, the number of an apartment, then he will be responsible for that. If he writes what is in the register, then neither he nor the one who's disseminating information is responsible. So step by step, we came to the situation when Mr. Petro, the Minister of Justice, a couple of days ago came to the meeting and said, I support this draft. And the Ministry of Justice officially and the government, even though I have an official opinion of the legal department of Verkhovna Rada, and it says that that's non-constitutional law because it opens personal data without the permit given by the person, but there are some objections that if we are talking about database of the cars that people own, then the people can start taking the cars, but basically you can start doing it any minute. You can come out of the Ukrainian house and start taking somebody's car. So these people are afraid, but average people are not afraid. Businessmen are not afraid. They insist on that, do it, because we earn money honestly, and those people who have to control the laws, they force us to pay bribes, they force us to commit crimes, economic crimes. They get richer because of that, and they are not punished, but business are for that, but some of the civil servants are afraid of that, but I believe that the civil servants will understand that is all done for the sake of the country. Thank you, colleagues. If you have no questions, I will sum it up. I would like to say that, in fact, from the point of view of reforms, we need to understand that transparency and honesty is a much more efficient mechanism of establishing trust in the society than building some new high-quality institutions, even though that is important. But very often structural changes in the society are made by very simple instruments. It's not obligatory to create a new army of civil servants. The people can come to agreement that there is some honesty and trust, and that's an example of reforms. Maybe not very well thought of, but these are very simple steps which will change our society to the better, and that's done not just because of the law, but because of the initiative of people. And there is a demand for certain transparency in this society, and such laws are part of big transformations of Ukrainian society. So we we hope that this initiative will start working. And this will not just be the basis for journalist investigations, but it will become the instrument of transparency when people understand that they shouldn't be afraid of wealth if the wealth is earned honestly. And there will be certain justice in this society. Thank you, Verkhovna Rada, for constructive news. And we'll be back tomorrow and we'll tell about more business policy. We'll be talking about moratorium on inspections, whether that affected development of business positively or negatively. So thank you and see you tomorrow.